As you work on your first exam for class, I wanted to share a few thoughts about where it fits into the bigger picture and therefore what I'll be looking for when I grade. I use the metaphor of the gears to talk about the overall idea of class in terms of helping you understand dynamics, but the same thing applies here, the idea that we have interrelated pieces. The exams fit into the class both because of the way they're related to the learning objectives and the way they're related to the unit readings and discussions. Those two pieces lead up to exams in some ways. My goal for this course as a whole is that you'll have the knowledge you need to thoroughly answer the question of what is IO psychology? How does it contribute to organizations, and why does it make a difference? Why do we care? In other words, how does it relate to or impact the day-to-day life of most people? Each of the units is designed to help you learn about specific points that relate to those questions. In other words, add a little bit more through each unit to your understanding and to how you would respond to those questions. Overall, the idea is that the units help you expand your knowledge by introducing terms, concepts, and ideas through the readings and hopefully by watching the videos, and then add to your understanding through the discussions. So the discussions add to your understanding both because you need to take it through some different channels in your mind to write about it and to apply it to the different prompts, and also by giving you a chance to see what your colleagues have said. Finally, I hope it adds to your understanding because of the feedback I provide in the responses and occasionally via email. The exams then help me understand what progress we've made towards meeting the overall goals of the class. That's part of the reason that I require you to use concepts and ideas from class to demonstrate your understanding. Each of the exams is going to be very similar in terms of the fact that they're going to include 3 prompts or questions. And the first 2 prompts for every exam will be the same. So you'll have some similar content. And as we get ready for exam 2, I'll explain a little bit more about what that means. Each part of your response, or your response to each of the prompts, I should say, will have multiple parts. So for example, on the first exam, your first prompt, first question, I'm going to look for 2 parts. I'm also going to look for 2 parts in the second question. The third question, I'll be looking for 3 parts. When I grade each of those, I'm going to be looking for 3 things. One is the obvious use of terms, concepts, and ideas and information from class. That goes back to the idea that I'm looking for you to use concepts to demonstrate your understanding about the objectives. I'm also going to be looking for accurate use of scholarly knowledge or information from class. So I think the accurate part probably makes sense, but keep in mind that I'm looking for scholarly knowledge. We've already talked about how some of the ideas we use in this class are kind of common sense, and so I want to make sure you're drawing on information from class and not just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And then finally, I'm going to be looking for thorough explanation. And that's again partially just to gauge the degree of your understanding versus how much you're just kind of flying from the cuff. So we're going to look at some examples to understand those different parts and what I'll be looking for. And if we think about the prompt, how does IO or knowledge from IO psychology contribute to organizations and businesses? The first thing I'm going to look for is obvious use of terms, concepts, ideas, or other information from class. This slide includes a weaker example and a stronger example. You might pause the video for a second if you want to reflect on this idea. The reason I included this, and I use leadership because it's a unit that we won't be covering in class, so I'm not giving you anything for the exam, but it's a great example of some of the potential pitfalls. We talk about leadership on a regular basis, and we're not always talking about it in the same way we talk about it in class. So if you use a general term and just kind of throw it out there, I don't know you using information from class, and therefore I can't assess your knowledge related to class. The accurate use of scholarly knowledge falls along a similar pattern. If you're using information that's not accurate, that's one thing, but then it's more gray, or it's also a problem if you're not clearly using information from class. So again, you could pause this slide and consider these examples in my explanations. Finally, the thorough explanation of how your idea relates to the prompt. We're back to the idea that I'm trying to gauge how thoroughly you understand the information in class. And so if you're too short and to the point, I don't have a sense of whether you're thinking I know what you're talking about, or whether your knowledge and your understanding is limited in scope. In other words, as you write this part of the response, think about not only making sure you're addressing the prompt, but also writing as if you were talking to somebody that did not know about IO psychology. If you assume that I know, then I have to assume that you're assuming, and we're not really getting to a good measure of what you know. So we think about formatting and writing this to make it easiest to demonstrate your understanding. Bullet points are fine. You do not need to write in narrative format. In fact, you could format it in a way that's very similar to what you see in this slide. That you have a bullet point saying, I'm going to answer this question, and then another level that says, here's the first part of this response, then a bullet point for each of the 3 criteria I'm looking for. Just remember that the first 2 prompts have a different number of parts of the response. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will look forward to reading what you're taking away from class.